You're with Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk, TNT.
As always, Dr. Heath, welcome back. Tell me what tea you're drinking today.
Well, this is lemon zinger tea because I'm fasting and I can't have food for another 6 hours or so. And I'm just enjoying this lemon zinger tea. I often like to drink a apple cinnamon tea is one of my favorites. But this lemon zinger, my wife and I have quite fallen in love with it. So I highly recommend that.
You did mention when we were behind the scenes in the green room as well, yin yang tea. What is
Yes.
that?
Well, I was on vacation with my family in Branson, Missouri, a great place to vacation. It's only, 4 hours kind of northwest of here, and eating at a bit of a German restaurant. And I said, bring me something interesting, tea or coffee. And so they brought me a blend, which is half coffee, half tea, with some cream in it, a bit of sweetener, and I think it's called yin yang tea. And it has become my favorite. I've actually started drinking less coffee and drinking more of the blend of the yin yang tea. It's great.
Sounds like a really unique idea. And, everybody's always had the thought, I wonder what coffee and tea would be like together. But of course, someone's gone and done it somewhere. Now, you're truly my favorite. It's my favorite time of the week. It's really good to have you on, and I feel like you're helping me navigate my world personally too. So we talked about the authenticity, about authenticity in general, briefly before, and what you said had a great effect on me. What analogy would you use to best describe authenticity?
Well, that's a great question, and in particular because so many people are on social media running around trying to be like everyone else. And so authenticity is really more of a clear, unfiltered way of being you. And the first analogy I would use, since my dad was a draftsman, which designed blueprints for houses and things like that, is a blueprint. So your authenticity, Johnny, is really your blueprint of you. And the thing I love about that is because if we have a blueprint of you, realize that only you can live in the blueprint of your life. No one else will be able to do that. And also, you won't ever be able to effectively or in a healthy way live in the blueprint of someone else's life. As I say, there are no duplications. Everything else is really just unhealthy fakery. And so no one can be Elon Musk, only he. No one can be Britney Spears. No one can be anybody else. We're infinitely, ultimately, authentically meant to be ourselves. And so first, I look at it as a bit of a blueprint. Now, let me add to that, because like if you talk about light, light sometimes functions as a particle. And then sometimes light functions as a wave. So with authenticity, it begins with a blueprint. And then if you can do a bit of a thought experiment, I would offer that it's a bit like a river. So if you look at a river, it flows naturally. It's just, unimpeded by many, many things, and it kind of carves its way. But imagine that it is a river of consciousness, which I believe human beings are. We are a river of consciousness. And I think of Bruce Lee talking about so many years ago about how we should be water. And so have a blueprint for the kind of river, conscious river of existence that you want to be.
That's really interesting you say that as well, because that's kind of how I've been trying to live my life, get over the stress by being like water. And when people say, oh, that just means you flow, that's not what it means, because water has lots of different effects depending on the surroundings. It depends what affects it. But what it's saying is you have to move with the flow of life. That's how I feel that I mean it by anyway. I know there's we don't normally get questions when you're on because we're normally going through like ideas, but someone's asked a question, and so I'm going to ask it. Joel Allen says, "Do you know of Dr. Barbara O'Neill, and if so, what's your opinion of her work?"
Gosh, I actually don't, but I certainly will look her up after this. I'd welcome if you could share maybe a theory or an idea that she had that I could speak on. But I really appreciate the recommendation. I'm always looking for other great thinkers to take a look at. So thank you very much.
Yep, awesome. Now, getting back, I talking about this, I find being authentically me taxing at times. I do a range of different things. I'm, not only on the radio, I do a lot of like in-depth investigations. I do a lot of different shows. I'm a musician. I like to walk around. I like to have a load of different strings to my bow. So when people ask me what I do, and I tell them honestly what I do, and what drives me, I often find a range of reactions, but most people either switch off or come to see me as a threat of some type. Is this usual?
Well, the things that we do really depend on that blueprint that I just talked about. And the problem gets to be when people start trying to fit things into that blueprint, which just aren't a good jigsaw puzzle piece fit into the blueprint as it's been designed. For example, we often will think that we have to stay faithful to our parents by doing things that only they would approve of. Well, that's a mistake because we're trying to live their life, not our own, or a spouse's preferences, or even our children's preferences, or a boss's preference. And so I would say that healthy living throughout life is staying faithful to your blueprint again. And so things that you do really shouldn't be done. I mean, they could. It's up to you. But if you try to kind of work them in there where they just don't fit with that blueprint, at least on my couch, which, by the way, is right over there. It's actually a very fancy lazy boy leather recliner with a back massager and a heated back to it, so it's very comfy. So when you sit over there, it's usually because either you have a blueprint and you're trying to force a round peg into a square hole or a square peg into a round hole, or what I find often is there's no blueprint. And so Nietzsche really talked about simulacra. Simulacra is something that has no blueprint. So it's really a fake of nothing. And so the problem gets to be when people go through life and they've never really even designed a blueprint or even thought of a blueprint with which to live by.
Hey, one of the things that I was on an X space the other day, and I was being asked lots of different questions, and I was, and on a few other shows, I've been asked the same question: is like, how do you switch off or relax? How do you wind down when you're doing all of this work all the time? And I've tried to explain in a monologue recently as well that I've set up what you're describing, a blueprint, kind of how I live my life, so that I can use different parts of my brain at different times, exercise different parts, leave different parts relaxed, but still have activities revolving around that. And I started it's taken me a long time to actually build up that blueprint. So how do I know that blueprint is authentically me if I'm trying to build it around my brain and how much I use my brain in different areas?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I think it has a few moving parts. One of my favorite quotes is, character is what you do in the dark. And so there's an interesting thing that I see on Spaces, in post, on X from different accounts, is I often wonder, is what this person's saying, is that something that they would kind of, is that the language they would use no matter where they are? Or do they speak differently for a special purpose when they're with this person? So if they're in this situation, they talk like a Navy sailor. Or if they're in church, they talk like St. Paul or something. And my brain picks up on that dissonance because there is a dissonance. It's actually a cognitive dissonance. And so here becomes the problem that will get you into therapy. Thank you so much for meeting your deductible and your copay and bringing your insurance card. But you won't need therapy as much if you'll work on the cognitive dissonance between what your blueprint is and what you show people. So I do therapy, but I also do movies and I also do workouts. And so those are things I do, but that's not who I am. Who I am as a human, I am always this way, kind of a goofy, snarky guy that thinks about weird things. And I'm really that way no matter where I go. Even in the gym, people see me as kind of this goofy, weird, snarky guy, and that for whatever reason reads books. I mean, who reads books? And like Spider-Man and watches Star Wars, but for whatever reason, like Star Trek also. Who likes both? What a weird thing. And so I'm really that way everywhere with a bit of a limit. And this brings it back to the river. The conscious river doesn't just blow through every obstacle. That's the difference between rivers as we know them and a conscious river. A conscious river of existence will take into awareness its effect on its environment. So it's really ethical consciousness. So in that ethical consciousness, one thing I'll do is put the relationship first. I will try to weave and flow around the relationship, finding value in the relationship and an opportunity to kind of carve away at some beliefs that I think you have that may not be very healthy for you. But I'll find many ways, like the great American father of hypnotherapy, Milton Erickson. I'll find a way at every turn and twist to ask permission. Can we talk about this? What would you think about this way of thinking? I've often thought this. What do you think about that? Let me present this buffet of different ways of thinking to you. And so at every point, what I'm really doing is asking permission. So I'm really, my existence is like a river, a flowing, powerful river, but it is also an ethical experience of existence. And so I'm that way no matter where I am with my family. I may be a bit more forceful with them because we have a closer relationship. My dad used to say, no one cares how much you know until they first know how much you care. So since they know how much I care, there's not as much work to do on that. If you're in a space and it's your first time, I may be much more of a gentle river. And so the point there, Johnny, I think, with authenticity is the you that is you never changes, though what you do in one context, another may change, but it really always looks like you. People really aren't surprised that this is you. And that's a problem that we see with celebrity figures, is there's such a incongruence from one setting to another.
Yeah, I would, in the same way you described yourself then, I would probably describe that other people see me as a playful charmer. And then I kind of found that funny, but I also think that's what I do. I kind of go and try and make other people's interactions with me easier by using humor, but also being nice to people and trying to be pleasant. I was brought up that way as well. So
And you're a master of that. I want to compliment you because, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your show, because this is me being authentic. If I can't compliment someone in good faith, then I'll find something else to say. And I want to compliment you because that really comes through from you. Just your humanity is overflows the screen and the airwaves. So thank you for being an authentic human. We need more of you.
You're a beautiful man. Thank you for saying that. Now we've got a couple of minutes left. I tend to see through facades really easy. It's both part of my nature and part of my professional life too. I've trained myself at being able to see through someone who may be fake or someone who may be putting on or inauthentic. But I'm always amazed by how inauthentic people are. The people who are clearly wearing a facade and how they are received by others. What do most people prefer? Do they prefer authenticity or illusion?
Wow, what a question. Sadly, I think, and I think the existentialist philosophers would say this too, and there's some good reasons for this from cognitive science. people really do prefer the illusion. And why is that? Because an illusion lacks substance. If it has substance, it has weight. So last night, I was doing my military dumbbell presses, and there was nothing illusory about the 80-pound dumbbell in my right hand and the 80-pound dumbbell in my left hand. They were freaking heavy, nothing illusory about it. So that's the reason. People prefer easy because easy seems less threatening. Actually, though, it is much more threatening in the long term. So we have a choice. We can choose the harder, heavier thing now of being authentic, or we can pay the price later in terms of relationships, jobs, just life success that we sacrifice for the illusion. And so it's hard when you run up against somebody that is inauthentic. They will see a difference between you and them, and they'll perceive that difference as a threat. But we can help them by planting our feet, showing space, grace, care, and courtesy, and remaining our authentic self based on our own blueprint.
You're a beautiful man, Dr. Heath, and I love having you on the show. Every time I walk away, and I spend a lot of time thinking afterwards. Thank you for coming on the Johnny Vedmore Show, my friend.
This is Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk, TNT.